As we head toward 2026, I want to name a leadership trend I've been seeing more clearly over the past year. In this time of uncertainty, pressure, and rapid change, many organizations are reverting to what they believe will feel safer and faster and more productive, which is clear hierarchy, tight oversight, top down decision making. In other words, command and control leadership. On the surface, it can look efficient or decisive, even. But here's the distortion. Command and control is being used as a default management system rather than what decades of research show it actually is, which is a situational tool, best suited for urgent, high risk moments that require immediate coordinated action. When we apply it everywhere, all the time, we pay a very real price. Command and control leadership prioritizes compliance over commitment. And while compliance can deliver short term output, it quietly erodes long term capacity. What I see happening inside organizations looks like this. Collaboration is replaced by competition. So it's an every person for themselves mindset. Psychological safety declines because mistakes are punished instead of examined. So creativity narrows because people are optimizing for not being wrong rather than for being innovative. Research from MIT to Google has consistently shown that innovation depends on psychological safety, the belief that you won't be embarrassed or punished or humiliated for speaking up. Command and control cultures do the opposite. They reward silence and conformity and risk avoidance. So, this binary win or lose thinking increases groupthink and it drops engagement to the minimum required for employees to stay. People stop bringing their full intelligence to the work, not because they don't care, but because the environment has taught them that it isn't safe to do so. That's not efficiency. That's organizational atrophy. So, to be clear, command and control leadership does have a place in emergencies, in high risk scenarios when immediate coordination and clarity matter more than consensus. But when it becomes the dominant leadership philosophy, especially in knowledge based, creative, or interdependent work, it limits the very outcomes leaders say that they want: adaptability, innovation, and sustained performance. Leadership isn't about control, it's about capacity, individual and collective. And that brings me to the question that I've been sitting with as we look towards 2026. What do we want leadership to stand for after all of this change? If you followed my work for a while, you know that I have a deep affection for the Broadway musical Hamilton. I see a lot of myself in Alexander Hamilton as another first generation professional who's ambitious and driven in principles and sometimes operating at full velocity like a bull in a china shop. But the older I get as a leader, the more I aspire to be like George Washington. Washington openly acknowledged that many of his greatest lessons came from his most painful failures. He admitted error. He asked for forgiveness. He understood that leadership was not about dominance, but stewardship. And perhaps most importantly, he knew when to step aside. At a time when power was intoxicating and fragile, Washington demonstrated ethical restraint, an understanding that leadership without humility corrodes both the leader and the institution. As he says in the score, winning is easy, young man, governing's harder. That kind of leadership doesn't rely on fear. It relies on trust, accountability, and moral clarity. And it is far harder than command and control. So if we're serious about the future of leadership, there are behaviors we must commit to, even when they're uncomfortable. We must commit to creating environments where dissent is not punished, but examined. Sharing power intentionally, not hoarding it defensively. Measuring effectiveness not just by output, but by learning and resilience. Choosing ethical rigor over expedient control. Human-centered leadership is not soft. It is disciplined. It requires emotional regulation, self-awareness, and courage, especially in moments when fear tempts us to tighten our grip. As we move forward into 2026, leadership will not be defined by how much control we can exert, but by how much capacity we can unlock in ourselves and in others. We don't need more command. We need more conscience. more humility, more leaders willing to build cultures that outlast them. The question isn't whether command and control works in the short term. The question is whether it builds the future we say we want. And that is a choice, one we make every day. If you've stayed to the end of this, thank you so much for checking it out. Like, subscribe, and share with someone who you think could use it. I look forward to sharing more with you in 2026. Happy New Year. Be good to each other.